Hi Year 5, so today we are going to read and interpret line graphs. So this is a part of our statistics unit which we are going to be focusing on all week. So the first thing we're going to do is our anchor. So you can see here I have a type of line graph. So this line graph shows two pieces of data and we are going to label it using these 5 words down here just to give us a quick recap of the terminology that we use. So the first thing we've got is the x-axis. So we know that x goes along the bottom. It's the line that we draw that goes horizontally. And then we've got the y-axis that goes vertically. So we remember y to the sky. Okay. So the y is the line that goes vertically. Okay, and then we've got the key. So the key tells us what the lines represent. So that shows us here. So we've got the blue line that represents London, the orange line that represents Leeds. Then we've got the data. So the data is what you can see. The lines represent the data. So that would go with the lines. And then the title, we've got 3 titles, okay? So we've got the main title, which is daily rainfall. We've got a title down here that says weekday, so that's the title of the y-axis. And then we've got rainfall in millimeters, which is the title of, the weekday is the title of the x-axis, and the rainfall in millimeters is the title for the y-axis. Okay, so on every graph, you should find all of these things. Okay, so let's move on. So this graph here shows the speed of a car during a journey. So on the x-axis, we've got the time in hours, and up on the y-axis, we've got the speed in miles per hour. Okay, so this is what your learning is going to be a little bit like today. You're going to have a graph, and you're going to have some questions to answer about it. So the first question asks, what was the speed of the car at 5 hours? So when we read data from a graph, we go along the x-axis first, and then we go up the y-axis, okay? So we go along and up. Some people like to remember along the corridor, then up the stairs, okay? So if I start at 0, I'm going to go along to hour 5, and then I'm going to go up. In fact, I could use my ruler to do this. So I'm going along to 5, and then I'm going up to the point that is up for the 5 axis, for the 5 data point, okay? So I can see that the point that's been given to 5 is 70. So the speed that it travelled was 70 miles per hour. So remember, if there is a unit of measurement, it needs to be included in your answer. So the unit of measurement for this is miles per hour. Okay, so it says, how much faster did the car travel on hour 5 than in hour 2? So I know that hour 5, it travelled at 70 miles per hour. Oh, okay. And then I need to find what it travelled at hour 2. So I'm going to go along my x-axis to 2, then up to the point that's been plotted on for it, and I can see that that is 40. So I've got 40 for hour 2. Okay, and then it said, how much faster did the car travel? So I'm going to do subtraction. So again, like yesterday when we did word problems, I am looking for the vocabulary that tells me what to do. So I'm doing 70 subtract 40, which will give me 30. So the car travelled 30 miles per hour faster on hour 5 than on hour 2. Okay, so I've got a nice short sentence explaining what my graph shows. Okay, and then question 3 says, how do we know that the car travelled the same speed for 3 hours? So if we look at our graph, we can see that at one point between hour 3 and hour 5, the graph stays at the same height, okay? So it's not decreased or it's not increased on my graph. So because the line is flat, I can see that it stayed the same speed for 3 hours. 2 hours even, that should say. So I know this because the data line is vertical from our, not vertical, horizontal, from hour 3 to hour 5. Okay? So it is as simple as that. Okay, so I know this because the data line is horizontal from hour 3 to hour 5. Okay, and then let's move on to the next graph. So this time I've got one that similar to the one on my anchor, I've got 2 pieces of data represented on the same graph. So this graph shows the average temperatures in London and Lisbon during the summer. So along the bottom I've got my time in weeks, and on the y-axis I've got the temperature in degrees Celsius. So it says, what was the temperature in Lisbon in week 5? So the first thing I need to do is find out which line is Lisbon. So I'm going to use the key to do that, and I can see that Lisbon is the orange line. Then I'm going to remember I need to go across the x-axis first, and then I need to go up. So I'm at week 5, and I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to go to the data point. And then, because it's a bit tricky to see because it's quite far away, I'm going to use the horizontal line to take me to the y-axis. So I can see that in week 5 in Lisbon, it was 36 degrees Celsius, okay? You would just draw a dot or a small circle, but I can't do that on my keyboard, so I've just used a star, okay? So then it says, how much hotter was Lisbon compared to London in week 2? So I'm going to find week 2, and I need to find the data for London and then the data for Lisbon, both for week 2. So let's do London first. So I'm going to along the x-axis to 2, then up to the blue line, which would give me 28 degrees. So I've got 28 degrees in London. And then I need to do Lisbon. So I'm going to use my ruler again from week 2 up to Lisbon, and it was 42 degrees. Okay, so like before, like I did on the other graph, I'm going to subtract those numbers to find the difference between them. So I'm going to do 48 subtract 42 subtract 28. So I can't do 2 subtract 8, so I need to carry, I need to exchange. So I've got 3, and then I've got 12 subtract 8. So 12 subtract 8 is 4, 3 subtract 2 gives me 1. So we can see that the difference is 14. So we can say that Lisbon was 14 degrees hotter than London in week 2. Okay? And then the last one, it says, how many times was the temperature more than 30 in both London and in Lisbon? Okay, so what I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to delete these black lines. So that we can see the whole graph properly. Okay, so for this one, rather than going along the x-axis, because that's not really going to help me for this question, I'm going to find 30 degrees on the y-axis, and I'm going to draw a line. So I can go from 30 degrees here on the y-axis, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line at 30 degrees. And then anything that sits on that line or above, I know is more than 30 degrees, okay? So I can see that every day, every week in Lisbon, it was more than 30 degrees. I've got 6 weeks, so I know that that's 6. And then let's look at London. So I've got 1 for London, 2 for London, 3 for London. So I've got 6 for Lisbon, 3 for London, which gives me 9. So the temperature was above 30 degrees Celsius 9 times in Lisbon and London. Okay? So it's nice and simple like that. So just use the lines to help you. Use a ruler or draw a line, whatever you need to do. That will help you a lot, okay? And then finally we've got the last graph. And this is a little bit of problem solving and reasoning, okay? So here is a temperature of the temperature of Mo's house. So along the bottom it's got the time in hours and the intervals are 2 hours. And then on the y-axis we've got the temperature in degrees Celsius again. So it says describe 3 things you know from looking at the graph. So what I can see is when I look at 8 o'clock, I can see that the temperature starts to rise up until about 2 o'clock when the temperature starts to decrease again. Then it remains flat, so it stays the same for 2 hours, and then the temperature starts to increase again. So from Mo's graph, I could say that at 8 AM, the heating came on, okay, because the house has started to get hotter, okay. And then I could say the house was at its hottest or warmest at 2 PM. And then finally, I could say after being off for 2 hours at 8 PM, 8 PM, the heating came back on. Okay, just like that. So it's like you're telling a story. When you read the graph like this, you can tell a story, okay? And you will see that later in the week and possibly in one of your questions today. And it will talk about the filling up of a bath, okay? And it might ask you to tell a story about the bath. Okay, so if you are a silver child, you can do questions 1 to 2. Gold is 2 and 3. Platinum is 3 and 4. Why not challenge yourself and have a go at all of the questions?